Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop, and this is my initial comparison between the Nike Zoom Freak 4 and the Nike Zoom Freak 5. So of course, both of these shoes are from Giannis Antetokounmpo's signature shoe line from Nike, but the Zoom Freak 5 is his latest model. The Zoom Freak 4 of course is like a little oldest from last year. So if you guys do want to cop, but try to leave an affiliate link in the description box. As far as the retail price goes, they kept it the same, right? So the Zoom Freak 4 was 130 bucks, or retails for 130 bucks, but is on sale for like 80, 90 bucks just for some colorways because it is an older shoe. The Zoom Freak 5 retails, or this colorway retails for 130 bucks. The Gucci colorway kind of is $10 more expensive for some reason, but they pretty much kept it the same price, right? So again, affiliate links will be in the description box, but let's get started off with the Tracciones. And the Zoom Freak 4, I'm not saying the traction was bad, but if it was a little bit better, I definitely feel like it would be a little bit more like a better performer, obviously, right? I enjoyed playing in the Zoom Freak 4, but because of the kind of like lackluster traction, I mean, it was still solid. It's still a solid performer for the traction. So, but it wasn't top tier like, you know, the 808s or like the LeBron. So that's why I didn't really like playing in it as much as those shoes, right? But also it doesn't really have any squeak, which has nothing to do with performance. But in this colorway, it doesn't squeak really at all, right? The Zoom Freak 5, however, it seems like it has a really nice bite. Like just trying it on my wood floors, which I do like. Also, there is a nice, loud, high-pitched squeak, which also is a plus. Like I said, it doesn't have anything to do with performance, I know, but has a nice, loud, high-pitched squeak, right? So yeah, I mean the Zoom Freak 5, just from an initial standpoint, I haven't played in the 5s yet. It feels like it's better than the 4. I mean, obviously I played in the 4s and also I just tried it on my wood floors, and the Zoom Freak 5 seems like it has a nicer bite. As far as the dust goes, the Zoom Freak 4 didn't really pick up all too much dust, right? And I guess like it does seem a little bit more spread out, especially where the ball of your foot is, you know, as far as the grooves go. But the 5 is super duper close together, especially with this pattern, right? So hopefully it doesn't pick up dust, and hopefully it's still a good performer on dust. But right now, like as far as the stop goes, it does seem a little bit better for the 5s. And as far as the durability goes, I definitely feel like the 5 will be a little bit better. Right? For some reason, the Zoom Freak 4 still feels like it'll be pretty damn good, right? The grooves are actually, it's thin, right? It looks super thin, but the rubber is very hard. And same thing with the Zoom Freak 5, right? We have a lot of surface, you actually have more surface area, and the rubber seems hard too. So I guess for outdoor use, they'll both be good, but looking at it like kind of like objectively, the 5 seems like it'll be better because it has a little bit more surface area, right? So there is the traction there. Moving on to the heel to toe transition, they're both super duper smooth, right? So here in the 4, we have a nice curve shape, right? Also, this foam is actually quite soft. And then here in the Forefoot, we have a nice curve shape and a good amount of forefoot flex, but also look at that, a lot of midfoot flex, which is not good for torsional support. But here in the 5s, we have a nice curve shape as well, and a super duper soft foam. Nice curve shape here in the Forefoot, and look at that, so pretty flexible forefoot, but it doesn't flex at all here in the midfoot, giving you better torsional support. So yeah, torsional support feels better here in the Zoom Freak 5, but they both are very smooth for heel to toe transition so far. Now moving on to the cushioning setup. So the cushioning setup is kind of similar, but they did change it up, right? So as far as the zoom units go, so both of these shoes have zoom units, but it's bottom loaded here in the Zoom Freak 4, and they're pods, right? So as you guys can see one pod here on the lateral side, one pod here on the medial side, but it's bottom loaded. So you can't really feel the zoom unit right underneath your foot, which kind of sucks. Just gives you a little extra bouncy bounce, kind of like in your step, but it's not like for step and comfort, right? Like Zoom Strobo or anything like that, which I'm not a huge fan of. I'd rather have kind of like bounce right underneath my foot. But here in the Zoom Freak 5, we actually have a top-loaded zoom unit, and if you remove the insole, you can see the outline of the zoom unit, and you can feel the zoom unit right underneath your foot in the Forefoot, right? So it feels very nice. There's a nice compression, nice little subtle bounce as well, it feels like right now. So in my personal opinion, that feels better, right? So the zoom unit already, it feels better, and also, we don't know what foam they're using, right? I'm guessing Cushlon in both of the shoes. However, the Zoom Freak 5 feels a little bit softer actually. Right, the Zoom Freak 4 is actually still kind of soft, but the Zoom Freak 5, it feels softer. There's a little bit more compression, which I do like as well. And the cord feel and all that feels pretty similar, right? So for me, in my personal opinion, for like this initial comparison, the Zoom Freak 5 cushion feels a little bit better because of the top loader zoom unit. Cord feel feels the same, and then there's a little bit more softness, a little bit more compression in the heel for the foam, right? So there's that. Moving on to the materials. So yeah, as far as the quality goes, they're both pretty bad. You know what I mean? Like in the Zoom Freak 4, you have this like mesh material. Not the best for quality, but you know, it's thin, it conforms to your foot very well. It's overall pretty supportive as well. Then here in the midfoot, we have like, or on the medial side, we have like a mesh. The Zoom Freak 5, it's actually a little bit thicker, right? But it still conforms to your foot pretty well, right? But it does feel a little bit cozier too because of like this synthetic leather. And there's a little bit of poofiness to it, you know? So it all depends on what your preference is, of course. So I like how both of them feel. So the 5 feels a little bit more cozy here in the toe box. And then of course the Zoom Freak 4 feels a lot more like minimal, you know what I mean? And then here in the midfoot, it stays pretty damn thin for the 4, but here in the 5, it does feel a little bit more supportive, a little bit more rigid because of also this swoosh, right? And these kind of like eyelets. So these eyelets kind of act like straps. There's 4 of them, these blue ones and also these white ones. They kind of come down into the upper, kind of like straps, giving you better lockdown. So that does feel a little bit better for support. And then for the tongue, I would say it's around the same padding actually, right? They're both half booty construction tongues as well, but they're not super well padded like the Zoom Freak 2 and Zoom Freak 3 were, but it does still have like a good amount of padding, which I do like, I guess. And then here in the ankle area, I would actually say, yeah, the Zoom Freak 5 seems like it has a little bit more padding, just a tiny bit more. So yeah, I guess they're both like minimal uppers and they both conform to your foot pretty well. It just feels a little bit different. Like the Zoom Freak 5 does feel a little bit more like a little thicker, but also cozier. The Zoom Freak 5 is just ultimately like very, very minimal, right? So again, it's not like one's better than the other, but it depends on what your preference is. But also like the quality of the material, not the best for both of the shoes, right? So there's that. Moving on to the fit. So I don't know what's going on at Nike, but I feel like I've been going up half a size for most of their shoes, and it's been fitting me very, very well, right? So I went true to size for the Zoom Freak 4, and it fits me extremely well. And it fits me pretty much the same as the Zoom Freak 5, but in the Zoom Freak 5, I went up half a size, which is weird, but they both fit me perfect. So lengthwise, I'm pretty much good to go, going true to size here in the Zoom Freak 4, and then going up half a size for the Zoom Freak 5s, right? Like there's pretty much the same amount of length. Which is like my toes go pretty much right to the edge of the shoe. Now also here in the toe box, they're both quite snug. And then width-wise, I would actually say the Zoom Freak 4 feels a little bit more narrow, just because here on the side, my pinky toe feels like it's a little bit more squeezed, you know what I mean? The Zoom Freak 5 is still slightly narrow, however, so yeah, they're both very, very great fits. I don't know what it is. I guess Giannis and I have a very similar preference and fit, and maybe even like a similar foot shape. But yeah, they both pretty much fit me like a glove. But remember, I went true to size for the Zoom Freak 4 and up half size for the Zoom Freak 5, right? So there's that. Moving on to the support and lockdown. So the Zoom Freak 4, I pretty much had 0 issues, right? Here in the forefoot, I actually didn't really notice anything too much, even though there's not a whole lot of lateral counters and this material isn't super supportive because it like kind of rolls over on itself, but I didn't really have any super terrible issues with that, right? And then of course here in the midfoot, we have a swoosh, and in the heel, we have an external TPU heel counter. But the Zoom Freak 4 overall does feel a little bit more supportive. There's a little bit more going on for the upper, right? So we have, of course, this leather material. It doesn't really come here into the lateral side, but we have a little bit of the foam coming up, acting as a sidewall. We have this swoosh. We also have these straps, right? These kind of eyelets that come down into the material. We actually have 2 on each side, and when you tighten the laces, it kind of tightens over your foot, giving you better lockdown here in the midfoot, which does feel great. And then here in the heel, we have an internal TPU heel counter. So overall, the Zoom Freak 5 does feel a little bit more supportive. Like I said, it was adequate enough for me here in the Zoom Freak 4, but I feel like if you're a bigger dude or you want a little bit more support, right now the Zoom Freak 5 feels a little bit better, right? Let's actually see which shoe is wider. It'll probably be, yeah, it's like around the same. So lateral stability was good for me in the 4, so it'll probably be good in the 5s, right? Now moving on to the weight, I'm actually pretty curious. The Zoom Freak 4 is actually pretty light, and it's using less material, so I'm guessing the Zoom Freak 4 is gonna be a little bit lighter, but it'll probably be similar in weight, right? Yeah, so the Zoom Freak 4 is 11.05 ounces. The Zoom Freak 5 is a little bit heavier, like 11.45 ounces, right? So yeah, the Zoom Freak 5 is a little bit heavier, but not by much, like 4 ounces, and that's not a huge deal. But like I said, it's probably because, you know, the synthetic leather and stuff like that. They're using a little bit more as far as the eyelets go here in the midfoot as well. But yeah, they both feel pretty similar on foot. But it's just the Zoom Freak 5 feels a little bit more cozy, and also the cushion does feel a little bit better in my personal opinion. Now moving on to the aesthetics, I definitely like the 5 better. The 4 actually was pretty dope, and there's some pretty dope colorways, but I feel like the 5 looks a little bit better, just in my personal opinion. So tell us what you guys think of the aesthetics down in the comment section below. And if you go like this, the swooshes go the same way because the 4 had a reverse swoosh, right? But as far as my initial comparison goes, yeah, the Zoom Freak 5 is actually feeling better, and also it feels like a little bit of an upgrade, right? So it feels a little bit more supportive. It doesn't feel cumbersome. It doesn't feel like bulky as far as the upper goes, you know, especially with the synthetic leather, right? So that's a good thing. It feels better for lockdown. It feels a little bit better for support. Cushion, in my personal opinion, does feel better, and also the traction feels like it'll be better than the Zoom Freak 4. And it fits pretty much the exact same, right? So because of those reasons, right? That's a lot of reasons, and they're just little subtle improvements right now, but it does feel better in the Zoom Freak 5 in my personal opinion. And if the traction is top tier, the Zoom Freak 5 will definitely be a top tier performer in my personal opinion, right? So yeah, that about concludes my initial comparison between the Zoom Freak 4 and the Zoom Freak 5. Again, if you guys do want to cop either of these shoes, I try to leave the link in the description box. But that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.